Walt Disney is a household name in the United States. Through his characters, movies, and theme parks, he attempted to awaken everyone's hope and inner child. We're talking about the homeless teen who built Disney for just $40, and little did we know the struggle and hard work were efficient. Today's video shows you just how he did so and what Disney is today. Watch the video till the end, and here we begin with it. Walt built one of the world's most successful and powerful companies, which is now valued at an estimated $130 billion. But before we got anywhere near success, he lived on the streets with only $40 in his pocket. In 1901, Walt Disney was born in Chicago and raised on a farm in Marceline, Missouri. His mother, Flora, was a teacher, and his father, Elias, was a farmer and businessman. As a result, Walt didn't get to play as much as most 9-year-olds, who ran around and laughed outside. Instead, his days were consumed by work. Walt was fascinated by cartooning and reading stories about successful people who had exciting experiences. He also enjoyed the entertainment he discovered through a classmate named Walt Pfeiffer. He was taken in by the Pfeiffer family, who showed him movies, involved deal shows with music, magic, acrobatic, and comedy acts. He decided to consider what piqued his interest the most. It was clear that it was taking a photograph. When things were tough, it was always his refuge. He liked it when his cartoons made people smile and laugh. He then decided to become a cartoonist. He had no idea that following his passion would lead to creating one of the world's largest corporations. He quit all of his jobs when the 4th year of the First World War began because he wanted to fight. He also couldn't bear the idea of returning to high school, so he lied about his age to work as an ambulance driver for the Red Cross. He was also asked that there was no work for him and he was not about to give up. Roy later told one of his co-workers about Walt's obstinacy. Walt's friend suggested he look for work as an apprentice at an art studio. Roy immediately informed Walt, and Walt dashed to the studio to fill out an application. He got hired, and Walt met a man named Ub Lurks at the studio. Ub, like Walt, dropped out of high school and worked odd jobs. The two artists got to know each other and discovered that their skills complemented each other. Walt had a lot of ideas, and Ub was adaptable and quick to change. They decided to start a business together. It was known as Disney Lurks. The Disney Lurks collaboration only lasted a month. Walter was hired by the Kansas City Film Ad Company because they needed an artist. The company failed, and after that, Walt persuaded his boss to hire Ub. The failure of Disney Lurks turned out to be a blessing in disguise. He was shown how to make animations with cutouts of people and animals at work. He was curious about how it worked, so he made friends with a cameraman to learn more. Walt later discovered that hand-drawn figures, rather than cutouts, gave animation a more realistic appearance. He also saw how the best New York studios made movies, like the Coco the Clown series. Finally, Walt's new skill impressed the Kansas City Film Ad Company, which hired him to create hand-drawn animations for their clients. He was ecstatic, but he also wanted to branch out from what the company copywriters had assigned him. After making 300 feet of film, he felt confident enough to show the manager of the Newman Theater Company his cartoons. The manager was impressed with what he saw, and he agreed to show Walt's cartoons. They were so popular that he quit his job and he founded the Laugh-O-Gram Films. Walt wanted to distinguish Laugh-O-Gram from other studios, so he focused on a new series of animated cartoons based on traditional fairy tales. He pitched this idea to investors and raised enough funds to rent an office space and hire Ub and 5 other animators. Soon after, he struck a deal with pictorial clubs to create 6 fairy tale themed cartoons. Walt and his team completed all 6 cartoons in the same year, but when they submitted them to pictorial clubs, they received no compensation. The pictorial club's venture failed. For the first time in his life, he had reservations about becoming a cartoonist. He decided he no longer wanted to be a cartoonist and he sold his camera. Then he went to Hollywood with only $40 in his pocket. He aspired to work as a director in the film industry with his uncle Robert. When Walt moved to Hollywood, his luck did not improve. Every studio he applied to as a director turned him down. There were no cartoonists in Hollywood at the time, and the best animation studios were still in New York. Walt was skeptical that he could beat them from Hollywood. Walt determined that the only way to re-enter the film industry was to create more fairy tale themed animations. Following that, he established a makeshift studio in his Uncle Robert's garage and approached film distributors to pitch ideas. One of his concepts was to create a series of comedies based on Alice in Wonderland for Margaret Winkler, a New York distributor. Fortunately for Walt, Margaret agreed to assist him. Walt then persuaded Roy and Oob to quit their jobs and join him in starting a new business. Alice in Wonderland was a huge success, and the first book in a larger series. However, before the excitement subsided, a new opportunity presented itself, and the finished piece was called Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Trolley Troubles, its first short film, was an instant hit, attracting the attention of New York's top animators. However, even though Oswald was a huge success for Walt, he struggled to find a distributor for Steamboat Willie, his first Mickey Mouse animated short film. Later, he was suggested by Harry to play Steamboat Willie on Broadway. Steamboat Willie was released a few months later at the Colony Theater. It made history as the first animated cartoon with sound and was praised by both the New York Times and Variety. And, just as Harry predicted, several distributors offered to screen the film, but each of them insisted on owning the rights to Mickey Mouse. After Walt and Pat struck a deal, Mickey Mouse became a huge hit in the United States. Walt pushed himself and his animators to make better animations with the help of Columbia Pictures, even though it had put them further in debt. However, Walt's stress eventually caught up with him, and he had a nervous breakdown. Also, Walt created his first full-length color and sound film. The story was chosen to be Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. However, when Walt started working on Snow White, he discovered that people were calling it Disney's folly behind his back. After 3 years, Snow White was finally released. It made history by being the world's first full-length animated film. It lasted 83 minutes. It received favorable reviews and performed well at the box office. It was the highest-grossing film of its time, grossing more than $8 million in its first year, the equivalent of more than $100 million today. Walt's newfound success enabled him to purchase a new studio and house for his once skeptical parents. Unfortunately, his new feature films, Pinocchio and Fantasia, went over budget, costing the company money and bringing it dangerously close to bankruptcy. Despite his many problems, Walt continued to feature films in his most ambitious project, a new attraction in Hollywood. Walt was determined to build a theme park, and he traveled around the United States and Europe for inspiration over the next few years. He finally found what he was looking for at Copenhagen's Tivoli Gardens, a park with family-friendly rides, nice restaurants, beautiful gardens, and fireworks. Walt's plans had expanded beyond his original concept by the time he decided to name the Disneyland, and money was running out. So, Walt started a weekly TV show to help pay for the park's construction. When Walt presented the idea to the board, they stated that the company was not in the business of creating amusement parks. Amusement parks, according to Walt, are also in the entertainment business. 2 years later, the park opened in Anaheim, California. According to the reports, the first day was a flop. Thousands of fake tickets were sold, rides broke down, restaurants ran out of food, and a gas leak was discovered in one area. But as usual, Walt did not give up and turned things around by changing how things worked and inviting the press back. Over 3 million people visit Disneyland within a year, and the ABC show quickly became the most popular show on television. Walt finally got his finances in order after 30 years in Hollywood. Walt discussed what he thought made people successful in an interview. Today, Disneyland is known as the happiest place on earth, and Walt Disney is one of the world's most successful and powerful companies, with an estimated $130 billion in revenue. Let us know your views about the success journey of Walt in the comments down below. Make sure to subscribe for more.